Stevenson Island. And who's that named after? This is a deep history question, I know.
Obviously it's James Stevenson.
Yes, way to go. She's a wonderful reader. James Stevenson of the Hayden Expedition. Do you recognize the name Hayden? Hayden Valley? Okay, so that's geologist Dr. Ferdinand Hayden. He wasn't the only one on the expedition. There's tons of people. Along with James Stevenson, there was artists like Thomas Moran, photographer William Henry Jackson. James Stevenson's role in the trip was really marked here on the lake. He was responsible for figuring out how big this lake was. And so this little wooden boat is what he was on. It was about 12 feet long, so I would say from here to about right here. So not a very big boat with limited technology. He figured out this lake is 131 square miles. Took decades later, more modern technology, all of that. We found it was 131.7 square miles. Yeah, genius. I'm not very good at math, but I know this lake would be impossible for me to figure out. Anyway, so that's one of the reasons why this huge island is named after him. And so if you take a look at this boat right here, you're going to see something a little off. If you look at the back, the boat is named Annie. And the congressman that they were trying to impress, his daughter was actually named Anna, so it was a typo. So we got Annie right there. One of the things you're going to see missing is a reflection in the water. The name Annie is not going to be in the water, so we know it was an afterthought. They asked the photographer to superimpose that name on the back, and it's just really to get the attention of the congressman. And of course that mission was successful. The very next year, March 1st, 1872, Yellowstone becomes a national park. And so every little attempt to get their attention, be like, hey, Yellowstone, please, we want to be a national park. And it's one of those funny things. As we scoot along, we're getting a little bit closer to the shipwreck right here. This is the EC Waters. So I'll hand that around so you can take a look. It's that right there. And so EC Waters was kicked out of the park after he spent his entire fortune on this boat right here. One of the reasons why he was kicked out of the park, well, there's many, many different reasons, is EC Waters was very corrupt. He wasn't satisfied with the money he was ever making. He was constantly trying to do things that were more extreme to find another source of revenue. One of the things he did one summer season is he tried to smuggle in a ton of strychnine and weapons with one other employee from the North Pacific Railroad, and they were caught. And when they were caught, they realized the superintendent found that he had enough strychnine to kill half the game in the park. And one of the reasons why he did that is he knew a ton of money could be made selling furs. So EC Waters did that. He's had many, many other scandals, but what led to the demise is going to be this boat right here. EC Waters was on the lake. He spent his entire fortune, never had a single paying customer on this boat. And it's because he had really frustrated a boat inspector prior, and the boat inspector just never approved of it until eventually EC Waters get kicked out. He doesn't have enough money to move the boat, so he puts it right here. Very strategically, because this arm of the island protects the boat from the crazy strong winds that we get through here. Some of the winds can reach about 40 miles an hour, so this boat would really be damaged, not like it is now, but by the winds and the storms that come up here. So what happened? Why is this boat burned down? Was it 1917 when it was burned down? 1930, this boat was burned down, and it's because it had been abandoned, bless you, it had been abandoned on the shoreline for so long, it became a very popular hot spot for people to hobnob. They would go here, they would go drinking, partying, hang out, just lay out on the boat, explore all the different rooms and areas on that boat. As you can tell, it's very big. And eventually, rangers got really annoyed and frustrated. They're like, we keep coming out to this island and finding troublemakers. One, we're definitely afraid somebody's going to get severely hurt out here. Somebody might be left here on the island. We don't know how to make sure we keep people safe. So 1930, we got Albert skied in boots. They come out here. It's two rangers and a winter keeper. They ski out here in January, and they douse with kerosene, and they burn the whole thing down. Not before they took out the boiler in the boat. That boiler was moved to the Lake Hotel and heated the hotel for 40 years. Oh, yeah, very resourceful people. Now, I can answer your question in just a second. And so one of the reasons why that's an even bigger dig to EC Waters is because he was fired by the Lake Hotel. And so it's just salt on that wound. What's your question? So the boat's actually on its, is it on its side right now?
It's leaning to the port side, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so it's on its side. So it must have just happened after they burnt it. It must have just gone that direction. And
the person who like had the heart attack, was he like in that boat before it was burned down?
he was there before the boat was burnt down. Yeah. And so with this situation, it was an ask for forgiveness, not for permission. And those rangers, I believe, one was sent to New York, and where was the other one sent?
Death Valley.
Death Valley. So, yeah. Anyways, another question that we get here often is what animals are out here on this island? Sometimes we'll see the occasional osprey, bald eagle, and the occasional elk. This entire lake freezes over completely, anywhere from a couple inches to several feet. And so elk will cross this just la-di-da-da, and then spring will happen. And this lake, when it thaws out, it happens quick. It will happen overnight. And so these elk might get stuck on the island. Of course, there's plenty to eat, lots of fun, but they can't hang out with anybody. So they have to wait until the next freeze over, which is usually by December, and they'll hopefully walk back over, have the common sense to do that. Yeah?
How did that guy get a heart attack?
Probably was not eating right, or maybe genetics, who knows. Yeah, too much cholesterol, yeah.
How deep is this
Too
lake?
many bison burgers. What?
How deep is this lake?
So on average, this lake is 141 feet deep. The deepest point is going to be about 410 feet. Yeah. You can. Just be careful. There's hundreds of thermal features underneath the water, so it might get a little hot in some places. The places that are going to be the hottest is going to be closer to Mary's Bay, which is going to be to the east side of the lake. If you do a Storm Point Trail, if anybody's been over there, you're going to walk right by Mary's Bay. That's actually the world's largest hydrothermal explosion. By hydrothermal explosion, that is very different than a volcanic explosion like the one that happened here 640,000 years ago. Because a hydrothermal explosion, as you can tell, hydro, water, explosion. So a hot water explosion, it does not have the magma that would follow like a volcanic explosion. That's the two differences. And so we have several other explosions that have happened since the 640,000 years ago, and that's one of the reasons why we have the arms to the lake as well as West Thumb. And I always get these dates wrong, but I want to say Mary's Bay was 13,800 years ago. West Thumb was 125,000. Or what's Mary's Bay?
I don't know.
West Thumb was like 160,000.
Yeah.
Yes.
West Thumb was 125.
25,000. Okay, that's what I
said.
Cool.
We were just there.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Did you do the Abyss talk? Or the walk? Or
No,
walk?
we did not.
Okay.
That's good.
Sweet. Do we have any questions about that story? So we're going to talk a little bit more about why EC Waters was kicked out of the park. He, of course, continued to do some crazy things. Not only did he try to kill all the animals in the park, but he tried to make this entire park a petting zoo. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Petting.
That'd be one big petting zoo. 2.2 million miles.
From New York. I'm originally. I live in New York.
as you look around, you're not going to see too much infrastructure, right? You don't see any huge log cabins around here or yellow buildings. And this is one of the most special places in Yellowstone because I don't see any other boats. I don't see any other cars. It's just us. And if you can imagine yourself on this 12-foot boat, just being in complete awe of this beautiful lake. And as we look forward, on our right side we have Mount Sheridan, on our left side we have Flat Top. And so these two mountains are going to be, okay, actually right in between the two of them we've got the Tetons. If you look close enough, you can kind of see them. So if you don't get a chance to go down there, you can still tell people you saw the Tetons, right? As we're looking in that direction, do you see that little island? Little dot of an island? Okay, so that's called Dot Island. And like I mentioned before, we've got a petting zoo here in Yellowstone. Where is that petting zoo? Well, of course, it's in the middle of the lake. EC Waters was trying really hard to compete with the Norfolk Railroad that owned most transportations, all the hotels, all the restaurants. And he wanted something original. And so he thought, okay, I'll get people on my boat, but that might not be enough. Because the boat was originally named the Useless. It couldn't go that fast. It's only about 60 miles an hour. Constantly falling apart, not the safest ride. So how is he going to get more people out here on this lake? He thought of this great idea of having a petting zoo on this island. He got the permission of the Department of Interior, and they said, sure, go ahead. Another idea he had for this petting zoo was to actually have Native Americans out on the island as well. He wanted to provide that perfect Western experience for visitors, something that wasn't intimidating, something they could come up to and pull away from. And so the Department of Interior said, sure, go ahead, have Native Americans out there. But their stipulations were they must be paid, they must be willing to go. And EC Waters, I'm sure, as soon as he heard they must be paid, he's like, never mind, never mind. So he only had animals out here. We had bison, pronghorn, bighorn sheep, and elk out on this island. And so what he would do is, in the early days of this zoo, he would bring out hay, and he'd take bales of hay out to this island, and he had it fenced off, and he would take the hay and he'd swing it in front of the wooden gate. And he would wait for the animals to get all riled up, and they would charge. And as soon as they were close enough to the gate, he would drop it, and they'd be completely docile and eating. So distracted that people could reach in and pet these animals. And this happened time and again. However, as his resources became strained, thank you, on the EC Waters, he spent his whole fortune on it. He starts to cut corners in many of his other business ventures, including the petting zoo. So what he does is he starts to steal scraps from the Lake Hotel. Those scraps, if anybody has eaten anything in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, especially here in the park, you know it's a lot of bison meat and it's a lot of red meat. And so what he would do is a lot of these scraps, he would take them to this zoo, and he would drop them off just like he did with the hay. And do any of these animals eat meat? No. Okay, so what are they called? Herbivores. Thank you. And so people got alarmed. Even though it was way back when we didn't have the best science or biology, people knew something was wrong on this island. These animals were emaciated.